Hello smart crafters, welcome to the fourth MadCommands tutorial. In this video I'm going to tell you more about variables and expressions. Hello, I am Madhon and this is my assistant Knedlik.
Hi!
In this video I am going to teach you more about variables and expressions of MadCommands. In this video we are going to spend most time or almost all time in the chat writing commands. It's going to be hardcore, but hopefully this will shift you a long step forward with MadCommands. So let's start with telling you a little bit about what variables and expressions are for. You can actually think of variable as maybe a box or container that can contain some information. And the information can be number, text, or set of different values. So let me give you a very quick example now. So here I am creating a new command, tut1 as a tutorial 1, where I will show you what happens when I try to use a variable called myvar. So as you can see here, when I run the command, so as you can see, I have added number 123 to the variable, and on the second line I actually made it show me what's in the variable, and it showed me that myvar is 123. So as you can see, the variable can contain a number. Now what expressions are for? Expressions actually let you do some kind of math or magic with variables. So here I am doing a little math, adding 123 and 321. So now I will add another command to actually tell me the result. It seems I have made a mistake, so let's try again. And let's try it. Okay, so now I see the result of calculation of 123 plus 321, and the result is 444. As you can see, working with MadCommands requires a lot of patience because you have to type a lot, but for this video we are at the very beginning. We haven't started yet. So let's start with variable names. As I said in the beginning, variable can be seen as a container or a box containing some value, and the box has to have a name. In MadCommands, every variable name starts and ends with a % sign. The reason for this is that so that MadCommands easily recognizes variables from anything else. So when I try it without the % sign and try to run the command, you see error at line 5, syntax error. That's because I didn't include the % signs around the variable name. Let's try something else. So let's try the variable name x with the % signs around it and see what happens. And now we get another error, variable name reserved. The reason for this error to appear is because MadCommands already has some variables predefined for you. If you check the cmd help, actually cmd help variables, MadCommands will give you a list of all predefined variables, and as you can see, the variable x is already reserved and it contains the current player's x coordinate. There are not many predefined variables, but those that are there cannot be used as a custom variables, so you cannot use these variable names for your own variables. You have to use different ones. So let's see an example how the predefined variables work. We'll create another tutorial example, another command. And let's see what the predefined variable time contains. Now if I run the command to, it should give me the current time. Current time is 2012745555. What does that mean? Let's try it again. Now it gave me a different number. You see, the number is changing every time I run the command. That's because the predefined variable, each time I start my command, contains the current time. And the current time is represented by number of seconds that elapsed since the 16th of August 2011 midnight. Anyone knows why exactly 16th of August 2011? Let's make it a challenge for you smart crafters. Who will be the first to write the correct answer as a comment under this video? Again, the time is number of seconds from the 16th of August 2011. So hopefully that's enough about predefined variables. And let's talk a little bit about what different types of values variables in MadCommands can hold. The most obvious that I already mentioned are numbers and text. So let's try to work with numbers a little bit. Here I will take one parameter and simply add number 1 to it. As you can see, if you make a typo, you spend a lot of time typing the same thing again and again. So it's better to avoid typos or check that you have not made any mistake before you press enter. So now I will run the command and you see it added 1 to the one I provided and gave me a result of 2. So 1 plus 1 is 2. Now let's try with a fractional number. Let's say 1.1. 1.1. Okay, now you can see that 1.1 plus 1 is 2.1. So that's how MadCommands work with numbers. But what if I try to pass text to my command? Hello, for instance. And here you can see hello 1. So if you work with text in MadCommands and you add something to text, it will add text as a text to the end of the text and it will concatenate the two strings together. Another thing is I can even, I believe since Minecraft 1.2, pass spaces in parameters. So let's try that. You do that by using quotes. I will talk about it a little bit later. So A, B, C, D, for instance. So now you see A, B, C, D 1 with all the spaces. So these are the two variable kinds or variable types, numbers and text. There is one more special type which is called Boolean. Boolean value can be either true or false. This can be used for checking if something is true or not and deciding what you want to do. So let's try something here. And let's compare two parameters. This way, the variable called bool will contain the result of comparing whether parameter 1 is greater than parameter 2. And obviously we want that command to also show us the result. So let's use message for that. And now let's try it. Is 2 greater than 1? What do you think? Something wrong. Error at line 3 in that expression. We have a mistake in the command procedure. Yes, I forgot the % sign after the args variable name. So let's edit it. I'll be repeating myself, but as you can see, making mistakes takes a lot of time because you have to write the same thing again and again. Now it should finally work, so let's try it again. And let's try to find out whether 2 is greater than 1. And the Boolean value is 1. When you have a Boolean value, it can be either 1 or nothing. 1 represents true and nothing represents false. And let's try to find out whether 1 is greater than 2. And the Boolean value is nothing. Nothing means false, so that means 1 is not greater than 2. Let's try the same thing with text. And Boolean value is 1, which means that B is greater than A. When you compare text in MadCommands and in basically any programming language, text is compared alphabetically. So the letter that appears in the alphabet before, sooner or earlier, is lower, has lower value. So A is lower than B, B is lower than C, and so on. Also, capital letters are lower than lowercase letters. Okay, so I believe that's enough about the value types, about the different types of variables. Although we do have one more variable type, which is called array, but that's a little bit complex, so let's talk about it later. Now I want to tell you about something called literals or constants. Because the most important thing about variables is that their values are variable. That's why they are called variables. So when in your command procedure you use a variable called myvar, you never know, unless you set it yourself, what the variable will contain at the time you use it. So the variable can contain number, text, it can contain your name, it can contain some player's name, it can contain any number. You don't know that in advance, and that's what the variables are for. But if you want somewhere in your procedure something that is always the same, you use constants or literals. So let's look at the example that we have created so far. And as you can see here, you see 6 lines of the procedure, and in here you see that I have used my var variable on the first line, and I have assigned the number 123 to it. My var with the % signs around it is a variable name. The number 123, that's a literal, right? Because it doesn't change. Each time this line is executed, the exact number 123 is assigned to the variable. But you can assign a different number to the same variable. As you can see on the line 3, here you assign a result of calculating 123 plus 321 to the same variable. So even though the variable is used on line 2 and line 4 exactly the same way, it's called myvar. On the line 2, the myvar variable will contain the number 123, while on the 4th line it will contain the number 444, even though the variable is still myvar. If I add a new command to this procedure, and I simply display contents of the myvar variable to the current player, you see that in the end it displayed number 444. Let's try to add another command, and this time I will display a literal instead of variable. And as you can see, now it displays the literal 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is a literal of type number. So what if I want to display a text or assign a text to a variable? To create a literal of type text, you have to use quotation marks. And as well, I'll explain a little bit later, you have to escape the quotation marks. So let's use some text like hello world. And if I try it now, you will see that now the message displays hello world. But as you can see, the line that displays the contents of the myvar variable, it still displays the number 444. So what if I insert a line before it? So let's insert a line before the line number 7. That will change the myvar variable. And let's assign a text literal to it. And as you can see, instead of the number 444, I see now the hello there message. These were literals. Literals is what you insert directly into the commands or command procedures, and they don't change, while variables can change their values. Now, I mentioned that when typing a text literal, you have to escape the quotes. As of, I think, Minecraft Pocket Edition 1.2 and the PocketMine for that version, what has been added is the ability to actually have parameters passed to commands which contain spaces and special characters. And to allow that, the PocketMine authors decided to use the same mechanism that's used in many scripting languages, and that's escaping. What that means is that you use quotation marks around the text you want to pass as a parameter, but because of that, when you want to pass quotation marks as a character, you have to do it slightly differently. You see there are some literals with quotation marks. When I try to add such command by simply typing it, and now when I try to run the command, you will see that we'll get an error message. So at line 11, invalid expression. And the reason is that actually PocketMine removed those quotation marks that I type in my command. And the way to work around it is that you actually have to escape the quotation marks with a backslash. So if you want to have quotation marks as part of your command, you will write it down like this: backslash and quotation marks, some text, backslash and quotation marks. And now, because we have a backslash before the quotation marks get through to MadCommands and they remain in the procedure line. And if you want to insert the backslash itself, you simply type a double backslash. So for instance, if I want backslash in the text, I have to type it twice. The procedure, you can see the quotation marks are there. Let's make a little practice. Let's create a third example and let's become familiar with escaping. So we will add very simple command to the procedure. We'll just display all the parameters we passed to the commands so that you can see how they work. And as you can see, we got 3 arguments. The first one is the command itself, and the other 2 are 1 and 2. If I want to pass the words 1 and 2 as 2 words in a single parameter, I have to put them into quotes. And now, as you can see, there is only one comma because 1 and 2 are 2 words of a single parameter. What if I escape the quotation marks typing the same thing? As you can see here, I again have two parameters, but they also contain the quotation marks because I have escaped the quotation marks. So, what if I want to type backslash as part of my parameter? The backslash will be simply removed because backslash is understood as an escaping character, modifying how the next character is understood. So if you want the backslash to survive on its way to the plugin, you have to type it twice. Basically, escape the escape character. So this is how escaping works. Now, this is all the simple stuff, all part of the simple stuff. Let's return to the complex values which I told you about, and those are arrays. Array is a special type of value. It is actually a set or collection of multiple values. Even one of the predefined variables is array. It's the array of command parameters. So let's take a look at it. When I type 23 without any parameters, all it receives is 23. When I type 23 with 3 words, here we are. This is an array containing 4 values. First value is the command, and second, third, and fourth value are the parameters. What if you want to work with just one of the parameters? So let's try to extract them each one separately. So now I have added commands to show me individual parameters. So let's try the same command again. And as you can see, here I have simply extracted the individual values from the args array. Now let's go a little bit more complex. Since array is a type of value, any variable can contain an array. So instead of containing one value, variable can contain multiple values. So this way I add the arguments or the parameters to a variable called myArray, and then I display contents of the myArray variable. So let's try with the command again, and as you can see, even though on the last line I am writing the myArray variable, not the args variable, I see the same contents because I have copied the args variable to the myArray variable. But what if I assign whole array to one element of an array? Let's try that. And let's assign the whole array to the first or zero indexed component of my array. Okay, I made a mistake, so let's fix it. And here, as you can see, on the last line, I have an array consisting of 4 elements, where the first element is actually another array consisting of 4 elements. And this way, I have got a thing that's called multi-dimensional array. If you can imagine, we can go very deep here and we can have array of arrays of arrays of arrays of arrays of numbers, for instance. But wait, there is one more special kind of an array. All these arrays were simple lists of elements indexed by numbers starting from 0. But what if I want to build something like a dictionary? For that case, MadCommands lets you use any text or number as an array index. So let's create another command procedure to demonstrate that. And now I can try the new command with 3 parameters. And as you can see, I have a special array which is not just a list of 3 values, but each value has its own name. It has a value of name x, and the value is the number 1. Then I have a value y, and it contains the number 2. And the third value in the array is called z, and it has a value of 3. So can you imagine what this can be used for? I can, for instance, use an array to store information about players, simply by using player's name as an index. I can store information such as minigame score. So let's try that. Here I have created an array called score, which has currently 2 values. One is called Meton, and the value is 100, and one is called Knetlik, and this one has a value of 200. And then I have added a command that extracts the player name from the parameter and displays the score for that player. So now if I type tut5 Madhon, I should get Madhon's score, and I get 100. And if I type tut5 Knedlik, I should get Knedlik's score, which is 200. And wow, it works. So now that you know that variable is a name storage which can contain some value, the value can be a number or text, or a Boolean value which can be either true or false. It can also be a set of values called array, and the array can have either sequential or named indexes. So now let me show you in detail how you can work with those variables, assign values to them, get the values out of them, and combine them together to produce new values. Everything starts with the let command. And the help tells us that you can use the let command to assign value to a variable. And it also shows us different ways how to do that. You can assign an expression to a variable name with the square brackets, angle name with square brackets containing a number. This is something you have already seen. Or variable with square brackets containing a text. This is how you assign values to individual elements of an array. So let's create another example to demonstrate that. So let's assign one number to the variable name to a variable called a, and another number to a variable called b. And let's add 2 commands to actually display contents of those 2 variables. So when I now try to type tut6, it should tell me that variable a contains 123, variable b contains 234. So this way I'm using the let command to assign values to variables. Now what if I don't want to assign a simple literal to the variable? What if I want to do some math? Let's take a look at the help again. And as you can see, the let commands consist of the word let, then variable name, the equal sign, and an expression. What is an expression? Let's ask MadCommands help. cmd help expressions. And now you can see a detailed description what MadCommands considers expressions. And you can see there are something called simple expressions, and then there are complex expressions. So let's start with simple expressions. And the most simple expression is literal of the type number. So when we look at the last example, you can see on the first line I assigned the number 123 to the variable name. The number 123, as we discussed previously, is a literal, and it's a special kind of simple expression. It's the expression of type number. And the same is for the number 2, where I assign the number 234 to the variable b. Let's modify it now. And instead of number, we will assign text literal to the variable b. So when I type tut6 now, you will see that the variable b contains the word hello. So a string or text literal is another kind or another type of simple expression. Yet another type of simple expression is a variable reference. So let's look at what that means. I will edit the second line of the command procedure again. And on the right side of the equal sign, I will reference the variable a. And what this command does is that it actually copies the value from the variable a to the variable b. As I mentioned, there are also predefined variables. So when I edit the command to assign not variable a to the variable b, but instead the predefined variable p, you now see that the variable b actually contains my name. I am using the Steve TML guest as a username for shooting this video because I want my true Madhon character to appear in the video with the name over it. So I actually am connected to this test server from 2 different devices, and Knedlik is here as well so that I can see more connected users. So this was variable name as a simple expression, and let's try a little bit more complex but still simple expression, and I want to reference an array element. So let's modify the command to assign an array to the variable a first, and let's edit the second line of the procedure to assign the very first element of the array to the variable b. First array element has the index of 0. And to reference an array element, use the array variable name and the index in the square brackets. So now when I try to run the command, it tells us that the variable name b contains the word red, which is the first element of the array. When I modify the command to assign the second element b, which has the index of 1, you see that now the variable b contains the second element, which is the word green. So this is how you reference an array element of an array that is a flat array, which is just a simple list of elements. So how to reference array element if it's an associative array, which has named values? You do it the same way, but the index can be text instead of number. So here I assigned the array element named SteveTMLGuest to the variable b. And let's try what it does when I run the command. And you see that it returns number 123, which is the value of SteveTMLGuest element of the array. So here I have referenced the variable which is an array with a literal being used as an index. But I can also use a variable as an index. So let's try that. And here I index the array A with the variable P, which is a predefined variable containing my username. So when I run the command now, it will actually give me the same value because my username is currently on this device SteveTMLGuest. But as you can imagine, if the variable containing the array holds, for instance, a score or balance or whatever for each user, this way you can easily display the current user's score or balance to the user who runs the command simply by indexing the array using the user's name. As you may remember, there is already one array even as a built-in predefined variable, and that's the args array. Let me modify the procedure again. And instead of using the variable a and assigning element of that to the variable b, now I use the variable args and assign element with the index 1 to the variable b. So when I run the command now, the variable b now contains the first parameter, which was the word 1. But there is one special way to index array elements in a simple expression, and that's specifically useful when working with parameters, because instead of assigning just one element, you can reference all remaining elements starting from a specific index. You do that by writing the element number or the index number and the plus sign. When I run the command again with a few parameters, the variable b actually ends up containing an array with the parameters 2, 3, 4. So starting with the second parameter, and all the remaining parameters are copied to the variable b as an array. And that's all about simple expressions. And if your head hasn't exploded yet, you are ready to learn about complex expressions. Complex expressions are used for things like math. And if you look at the MadCommands help again, you will see that the complex expressions are of three kinds. First one is simple expression, then something called operator, and then an expression. The second kind is expression in brackets, an operator and another expression. I'll talk about the brackets later, and let's leave the functions for even later. That will be the last but one thing to talk about in this video. So let's look at what operators are. And again, MadCommands help will explain that to us. And just like operator in a control center controls the traffic or whatever the control center is supposed to control, here the operators are things that do something to the values which are placed around them. And the probably easiest to understand are the operators plus, minus, slash, which is divide, and asterisk, which is a symbol for multiplying two numbers. So let's try to do some math with these operators. And let's create a new example for it. And let's start with some simple math, such as adding two numbers. So now I have created a procedure that sets variable a to number 123, variable b becomes number 210, and then variable c should contain the result of adding a and b, which should be the number 333, and it does. Now let's modify it and make it a little bit more complex. Instead of 2 numbers, I will be adding 3 numbers. And now when I run the command, you'll see the result is 444. So let's go a little bit more complex and try some multiplication. So let's see equal 10 times a plus b. What do you think the result will be? It should be 1440. As you can recall from, or you can look in the MadCommands help, MadCommands is trying to take it easy, and it understands the number 10 as a simple expression, and the rest after the asterisk is a complex expression. So it first adds a and b, and then it multiplies the result by 10. And if you want to tell MadCommands to calculate it in the particular order, you have to use brackets. And if I try to run the command again, now I get the expected result, because I use the brackets to tell MadCommands in which order to evaluate the operators. So keep in mind when creating complex expressions with MadCommands that MadCommands doesn't evaluate the operators in any particular order, and if you want to make sure that they are evaluated in the correct order, you have to use brackets. Now let's try something more difficult than a simple math with numbers. Let's try to use text. And try that instead of assigning the number 123 to the variable a, I will assign exactly the same looking text to it. So it will be the number 123 as text. Let's see what MadCommands does with that. And I will put back the simple adding a and b. Let's see what MadCommands does with this. And I get 123210. That's because when I have two variables, one is of type text, one is of type number, it tries to work with those two variables as text, and it simply adds the text of the second variable to the end of the first variable. How about arrays? What do you think will happen if the variables a and b are arrays instead of text? Let's try that. So now we have two arrays, one with 4 elements, one with 3 elements, and let's try the command again. Do 7, and it gives us an array with the total of 7 elements. So it simply added the second array to the end of the first array. But what if we try to subtract? If you subtract 1 from 2, you get 1. But what if we subtract array from an array? And as you can see, when subtracting, MadCommands actually takes the first array and removes all elements that also exist in the second array from the first array. So because the elements, the numbers 3 and 4 do exist in the array B, they got removed from the array A, and the result is an array of 2 elements, numbers 1 and 2, which don't exist in the array B. Can you imagine what this can be used for? For instance, when you have an array of player names and you want to remove a player from that array, you just subtract array containing that player's name from the array of all players, and you get that one player removed from that array. So let's create an array with some player names first. And let's include Knedlik's favorite monster, Herobrine. And now, as you can see, I have 4 players in the array: Steve the EML guest, Knedlik Train, True Madhon, and Herobrine. So let's try to subtract array containing Herobrine from that array. So we will create an array which has only one element, and that's Herobrine. And here we have Herobrine eliminated. So we have eliminated Herobrine, and let's talk about the last set of operators, those which actually give us a Boolean value, because those are most useful with the if-then command. So let's try to check something. Let's try to check whether the current player is in the list. So we'll do if p, which is the current player's name, is in the C array, and if current player is not in the array C, then let's display you are out. And as you saw, we have eliminated Herobrine but not me, so when I run the command, it tells me you're still in. But what if I assign not Herobrine but the current player to the variable b? Let b equal to p. Let's try the command you are out. And as you can see, also, instead of displaying an array, the array became a text string. So if you want to keep it as an array, you have to subtract array from an array, not string from an array. So let's do that. And now we have array which has me removed. So that's about complex expressions using operators. There are some more operators, but I'm sure you can learn them easily by checking in the MadCommands help. And now let's take a look at the last kind of complex expressions, and those are functions. If you check MadCommands help for the word functions, you can see that there are several named functions which take some parameters, and the function is written by writing a function name, then brackets, and in the brackets you, depending on the specific function, you type either one or more parameters. We have already used one of the functions, and that's a function called array, to simply build an array from literals or variables. But let's use a little bit different one. Let's use a function called online players. This function can be called with or without a parameter. If it's called without any parameter, it simply returns an array listing all online players on the server. So here we assign the list of online players to the variable, and when I run the command again, instead of having fixed array of players, it will show us that the players are True Madhon and Knedlik Train, and because we have the subtraction of the current player here, it doesn't show Steve the ML guest anymore. And basically what this does is that it shows me all online players except myself. This is very useful for interacting with the other players. You can use this function to build minigame functionality or whatever. So let's add some extra functionality to this example, and let's use another function which is called size. And let's use the expression using that function directly in the message command, so that you can see that in command you can actually use an expression. So we will send a message to the current player, and we will use this size function of the C variable, which contains the array of all online players except me, and we will concatenate another string, which will be some words, and we will add this size function again, and we will calculate total number of all players on the server. Now it's telling me you are out and 2 out of 3 players remaining. If you think about it, you can, for instance, use this simple calculation in a minigame functionality, and when you remove a player from the minigame, it can easily tell the player how many players are remaining. Now, one more example, which is especially useful for minigames, and a very useful function for minigames is a random function. This function lets you assign a random number from a given range to your variable or use it in an expression. So for instance, I'll use a random number in the range from 0 to the size of the A, which is array containing all online players, minus 1, which is the range of indexes of the array containing all online players. And we will send a message to all online players. As you remember, in all cases previously, we sent a message to the current user. Now we are sending message to all online players, so this is kind of broadcast. And the message will be that today's winner is Knedlik Train. And if I try the command again, I may get the same or different result. Now today's winner is True Marathon. So as you can see, this command now selects random player from all online players and tells everyone that this randomly selected player is the winner. Let's look at one more function which can be very handy when working with parameters. If you look back at the example we used before, you will see that here we use on the line 3 all parameters from the second one to the end. But the message that is displayed as the result, as the contents of the variable b, is automatically converted to text by MadCommands. So when I try to run it again with some parameters, I get b as an array. But what if I want to use all the remaining parameters as a single text string, or somehow combine it my own way? And what I can use for that is a function called join. So let's add one more line to this procedure, and that will be message. And now we will use the join function, where the first parameter of the join function will be the args variable, and the second parameter of the function will be a string that we want to use as a delimiter of the individual elements of the array. And now it lists me all parameters separated by semicolon. So if you want to concatenate easily all remaining parameters starting from a specific index as a single string, you can use the join function. So that's about the functions which I wanted to show you. There are more complex, more interesting functions in MadCommands, but I'll leave it to you to examine them. Just simply type cmd help functions, and you get a list of all of them with a simple explanation of what each function does. And you can even type cmd help and function name to get detailed help for that function with some examples. So that's all about functions, and we have one more But not the least, the most interesting feature which relates to using variables with MadCommands. You can do many things with variables, but without being able to remember the values of the variables, there is not much you can do. So what MadCommands let you do is not only to modify and work with variables, but it also lets you remember those. It lets you save any variable so that it can be retrieved later with another command or even after restarting your server. So for instance, if you have a minigame and you want to store score of individual players, or you want to do a leaderboard, you can have a list of players with their scores in an array variable, and you can save that variable so that you can retrieve it later. So let me show you how you can do that. I will create a new command called save list 1, and let's assign array of numbers 1 to 3 to the variable called mylist. And to save the mylist variable, I simply use the command save. I made a mistake, so let's fix it. Now let's create another command called savelist2 that will assign the same mylist variable an array of numbers 4, 5, and 6 and save it as well. And now let's create a third command that will show us contents of the variable mylist as it got saved. And in this command procedure, we will start by loading the variable, and now we can display the contents. So now let's try the two commands. And now let's try show list. Now you see we have an array of 1, 2, 3. So let's try save list 2. We should try it without a typo. And let's try show list again. Now we have a list 4, 5, 6. So as you can see, I have two commands. Each of them is saving a different list, and then a third command is showing me the list as it was saved. Let's try to create one more command. And as you can imagine, this command's purpose will be adding myself, that is the current player, to the list. So we will start with loading the variable. Otherwise we would overwrite it. Anyone who would be on that list already would disappear. So let's load the variable. Then we will check if the current player is already in the list, because we don't want to add him again. And if the current player is not in the list, we will add him. So let mylist. We will use empty square brackets to add a new element to the array, and use %p% as the current player's name. And of course we have to save the variable. So let's save my list, and now when I run add me, it will add me to the list. And when I run show list, you will see that the list contains 4, 5, 6 and Steve TML guest. So this is all about variables and expressions that I wanted to explain in this video. I understand it was a little bit hardcore, but if you understood everything up to the end, then I am sure you are now almost ready to start writing your own minigames using MadCommands. So that's all for today. I would like to thank Knedlik for being here so that I could easily show you the features like the online players function. And thank you for watching. I hope you subscribe if you haven't already done that. And see you in the next tutorial. Bye bye.
Bye.